The marshal's gun is aimed straight at Silas's chest. 5 armed men surrounding them in the California dust. Deputy Crane, the man who swore to uphold the law, now stands between that gun and the outlaw everyone wants dead. His own wanted poster flutters in the wind behind them. $500 for crimes against nature. One choice in a canyon 3 months ago led to this. 2 men who should be enemies, now willing to die for each other. Hendrix's finger tightens on the trigger. The old rancher's shotgun rises. Everything Silas thought he knew about right and wrong comes down to this single moment. If you want to hear uncensored, too hot for YouTube stories, check out my Patreon in the description. Tell us where you're watching from and subscribe. The desert wind carried the scent of gunpowder and something darker. Something that made Deputy Silas Crane's hands tremble as he pressed his back against the sun-scorched canyon wall. Blood trickled down his temple, warm against skin, already slick with sweat, and his revolver felt like lead in his grip. 3 bullets left, maybe 4 if he was lucky, but luck had abandoned him the moment he rode into Crimson Gorge chasing a ghost. Not a ghost, a man. The most wanted outlaw in 3 territories, and Silas had been fool enough to track him alone. The shadow fell across him before he heard the footsteps, and when Silas looked up, his breath caught somewhere between his throat and his chest. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black leather that had seen too many gunfights and not enough graves, the outlaw stood with the setting sun bleeding red behind him. His face was half hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, but Silas could see his mouth, the cruel curve of lips that had sentenced more men to death than any judge in the territory. Jax Maddox. The name alone made sheriffs lock their doors at night. Drop the iron, deputy. Jax's voice was rough whiskey and smoke, the kind of voice that crawled under a man's skin and settled there. Or I drop you where you stand. Silas's finger tightened on the trigger, but his hand wouldn't stop shaking. He had tracked this man for 3 weeks, following a trail of burned homesteads and empty graves, driven by something that felt too much like obsession and not enough like justice. The marshal had warned him, "Your daddy died chasing Maddox. Don't make me bury his son too." But Silas hadn't listened. He never did. The gun clattered against stone as it fell from his grip. Jax moved faster than seemed possible for a man his size, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. His hand shot out, fingers wrapping around Silas's throat, not squeezing, just holding him there against the canyon wall with the kind of casual strength that made Silas's pulse hammer wild and desperate. "You have been following me for weeks." Jax's breath was hot against Silas's face. And this close, Silas could see his eyes, dark as creek water under a new moon, sharp as broken glass. Why? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Silas didn't want to examine. "Because you killed my father." The words should have come out strong, righteous, but instead they sounded hollow, like an excuse rather than a reason. Jax's grip loosened slightly, his thumb pressing against the rapid flutter of Silas's pulse. "Your daddy died because he was stupid enough to ride alone into my territory, just like you." His gaze traveled down Silas's face, lingering on his mouth before returning to his eyes. "You don't look much like him. He was all hard edges and hate. You're something else entirely." Silas tried to pull away, but Jax's free hand came up, palm flat against the stone beside his head, caging him in. The outlaw's body was close enough now that Silas could feel heat radiating off him, could smell leather and sage and something wild that made his head spin. "Let me go." Silas's voice cracked, betraying him. "You going to kill me like you killed him?" Jax tilted his head, studying him like a predator, deciding whether its prey was worth the effort. "Kill you?" His mouth curved into something that might have been a smile if it had held any warmth. "No, deputy. I have got something else in mind for you." Before Silas could process the words, Jax grabbed his wrists, yanking them above his head and binding them with a length of rope that appeared from somewhere in his coat. The movements were practiced, efficient, the kind of thing a man learned from tying up too many people who struggled. Silas did struggle, twisting against the hold, but it only made Jax press closer, his hips pinning Silas against the wall in a way that sent fire racing through every nerve. Stop fighting. Jax's voice dropped lower, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. You are just making this harder on yourself. Silas went still, chest heaving, and in that moment of forced surrender, something shifted in Jax's expression. The cruelty softened at the edges, replaced by something Silas couldn't name, something that looked almost like curiosity. The outlaw stepped back, leaving Silas bound but no longer trapped against stone. He picked up Silas's fallen revolver, checked the chamber, then tucked it into his own belt. Your horse ran off when the shooting started. Mine is a half-mile north. We are walking. Where are you taking me? Silas demanded, but his voice had lost its edge. Fear had given way to something more complicated, something that made his skin feel too tight and his thoughts scatter like startled birds. Jax didn't answer. He just grabbed the rope binding Silas's wrists and pulled, forcing him to stumble forward. The walk through the canyon was silent except for their footsteps and the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. Silas's mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Outlaws didn't take prisoners unless they had use for them, and from the way Jax kept glancing back at him, eyes dark and unreadable, Silas suspected that use had nothing to do with ransom. The hideout appeared as the sun touched the horizon, a weathered cabin tucked into a crack in the canyon wall, hidden by scrub brush and shadow. Jax pushed open the door and shoved Silas inside. The space was small, just one room with a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table, and a bed that had seen better days. Silas's throat went dry at the sight of it. Jax closed the door and leaned against it, arms crossed, studying Silas with that same unnerving intensity. You know what they say about me, deputy? Silas swallowed hard. They say you are a killer, a thief. They say you have got no mercy in you. They are right about most of it. Jax pushed off the door, crossing to the fireplace. He struck a match, and flame bloomed in the growing dark. But mercy, that depends on the man. Some men deserve what they get. Others, well, they deserve something different. The way he said it made Silas's pulse spike. What do you want from me? Jax turned to face him fully, and in the firelight, his features seemed softer somehow, less like the monster from wanted posters, and more like a man carrying too many ghosts. I want you to stop chasing me, then let me go. Silas pulled against the ropes. I will ride out of here, and you will never see me again. Liar. The word was quiet but absolute. You will go straight to the nearest marshal and bring back a posse. Your kind always does. No, deputy. You're staying right here, until I figure out what to do with you. Silas opened his mouth to argue, but Jax crossed the room in 2 strides and pressed his hand over Silas's lips. The touch was rough, calloused, but not cruel. Quiet, unless you want me to gag you too. For a long moment, they stood frozen like that, Jax's hand covering Silas's mouth, their eyes locked in a battle neither seemed willing to lose. Then Jax's thumb brushed across Silas's bottom lip, a gesture so unexpected and intimate that Silas forgot to breathe. You have got a smart mouth, Jax murmured. Wonder if it is good for anything besides talking. Silas jerked his head away, breaking the contact, but his face burned with something that wasn't entirely anger. The outlaw smiled. A real smile this time, and it transformed his face entirely, making him look younger, almost handsome. Relax, deputy. I'm not going to hurt you. Jax moved to the table, pouring water from a clay jug into a tin cup. Unless you give me reason to. He brought the cup to Silas's lips, and after a moment's hesitation, Silas drank. The water was cool and clean, washing away the copper taste of fear. When the cup was empty, Jax set it aside and began to untie Silas's wrists. You are letting me go? Silas asked, not quite believing it. No. Jax finished with the ropes and tossed them aside. But I am not keeping you tied up like some animal either. You try to run, I will shoot you in the leg. Understand? Silas rubbed his wrists, feeling returning in painful tingles. Why haven't you killed me already? The question seemed to give Jax pause. He stood there, backlit by firelight, his expression unreadable. Because, he said finally, I am curious. About what? About you. Jax pulled out a chair from the table and sat, gesturing for Silas to do the same. Your daddy came at me with hate in his eyes and a Bible in his pocket, called me an abomination before he drew his gun. But you have been tracking me for weeks, and you have not fired a single shot. So I am wondering, Deputy, what exactly are you chasing? The question hit too close to something Silas had been trying not to examine. He sank into the other chair, his legs suddenly unsteady. Justice. For my father. Justice. Jax's laugh was bitter. That is what you tell yourself. But I have seen the way you look at me, Deputy. That is not the look of a man seeking justice. Silas's face flamed. I don't know what you're talking about, don't you? Jax leaned forward, elbows on the table. I have been watching you too these past few days. Saw you at that creek 2 nights back, washing the trail dust off. Saw the way you touched yourself when you thought no one was looking. Saw whose name you whispered when you came. The words struck Silas like a physical blow. He shot to his feet, the chair scraping back. You're lying, am I? Jax stood too, and suddenly the small cabin felt impossibly smaller. Then why are you shaking, Deputy? Why is your face red? Why can I see your pulse racing in your throat? Because I am angry. Silas tried to sound convincing, but his voice betrayed him, coming out rough and uncertain. Number Jax moved closer, and Silas found himself backing up until his shoulders hit the wall. You are angry, sure, but not at me. You are angry at yourself, for wanting something you think you should not want. Stop. The word came out barely above a whisper. Make me. Jax's hand came up, fingers curling around the back of Silas's neck, pulling him forward. Their faces were inches apart now, close enough that Silas could count the scars on Jax's jaw, could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Please? Silas didn't know what he was begging for anymore. His heart hammered so hard he thought it might break his ribs. I can't, I don't know how. The confession hung between them, raw and vulnerable. Jax's expression softened, the predatory edge giving way to something gentler. I know. His thumb traced the line of Silas's jaw. I can tell. You are wound tight as a spring, Deputy. Probably spent your whole life being what everyone expected. The good son, the righteous lawman. Never let yourself want anything that did not fit in their neat little boxes. Silas closed his eyes, unable to hold Jax's gaze any longer. This is wrong. Says who? Your daddy? The preacher? Jax's breath was warm against Silas's ear. Out here, Deputy, there is no right or wrong. There is just what you want and what you are brave enough to take. I am not brave. The admission tasted like ash. You tracked the most dangerous man in the territory for 3 weeks with nothing but a horse and a prayer. Jax's hand slid down to rest over Silas's racing heart. You are braver than you think. You are just scared of the wrong things. Silas opened his eyes to find Jax watching him with an intensity that made his knees weak. What if I tell you to stop? Then I stop. Jax's answer was immediate, absolute. I am an outlaw, Deputy, not a monster. You say no, you walk out that door. I won't chase you. The escape route was right there, offered freely. All Silas had to do was say the word, but his mouth wouldn't form it. Because somewhere in the past 3 weeks of obsessive pursuit, somewhere between the wanted posters and sleepless nights, something had shifted. The chase had stopped being about justice and started being about this. About the fire in his chest every time he caught a glimpse of Jax's silhouette on the horizon. About the dreams that left him gasping and ashamed in the dark. I don't want you to stop. The words came out broken, barely audible. Say it again. Jax's voice had gone rough, louder. I don't want you to stop. Silas forced himself to meet Jax's eyes. Please, I need. What do you need, Deputy? Jax's hand moved to cup Silas's face, thumb brushing across his cheekbone. Tell me. Silas couldn't form the words. He had spent his whole life running from what he was, hiding behind badges and duty and his father's expectations. But here, in this outlaw's cabin with firelight painting shadows on the walls, there was nowhere left to hide. I need you to show me. His voice cracked on the admission. I have never been with anyone. Not like this. I don't know how. The vulnerability in those words seemed to break something in Jax. His expression shifted, the hardness melting away entirely, leaving behind something almost tender. Then we will take it slow." His hand slid down to lace his fingers with Silas's. "You tell me if it is too much, understand?" Silas nodded, not trusting his voice. "Use your words, deputy." "I understand." "Good." Jax guided him away from the wall, toward the bed in the corner. When they reached it, he turned Silas to face him, both hands coming up to frame his face. "First lesson. Kissing." Silas's breath hitched. "I have kissed before." "Have you?" Jax's thumb traced Silas's bottom lip. "Some schoolgirl behind the church? A saloon girl your friends dared you to approach? That is not what I am talking about." "Then show me." Jax leaned in slowly, giving Silas time to pull away if he wanted. Their lips met soft at first, tentative, like a question being asked. Silas's eyes fluttered closed, and he felt Jax's hand tighten in his hair, angling his head as the kiss deepened. It was nothing like the chaste pecks he had shared with Mary Beth Turner after church socials. This was heat and hunger, a claiming that made Silas's knees buckle. Jax caught him, strong arm wrapping around his waist, pulling him closer. The kiss went on until Silas couldn't remember how to breathe, until the world narrowed down to the taste of whiskey and want, until he heard himself make a sound he had never made before, desperate and needy. When they finally broke apart, Silas was shaken. Jax pressed their foreheads together, both of them breathing hard. "Still want me to stop?" "No." The answer came without hesitation this time. "Don't stop. Please don't stop. Never begging for something is more honest than begging for mercy." Jax's hands moved to Silas's shirt, fingers working the buttons with surprising gentleness. "Just remember, deputy, you're in control here. You want to slow down, you say so. You want to stop, we stop. This is about what you want, not what you think you should want." The shirt fell open, and Jax pushed it off Silas's shoulders, his gaze traveling over exposed skin with an appreciation that made Silas feel simultaneously vulnerable and powerful. No one had ever looked at him like this, like he was something worth savoring. "You are thinking too much." Jax's hands settled on Silas's hips, thumbs tracing small circles that sent shivers racing up his spine. "Stop thinking, just feel." Easier said than done when every nerve was firing, when years of repression were crashing against waves of want so intense it hurt. But then Jax was kissing him again, slower this time, deeper, and thought became impossible. There was only sensation, only the slide of lips and the press of bodies and the heat building between them like a wildfire. Jax guided him down onto the bed, following him, his weight a comforting pressure. Silas's hands came up, hesitant at first, then bolder, exploring the muscles beneath Jax's shirt, feeling the scars that mapped a life of violence. Each mark told a story Silas suddenly wanted to know, wanted to trace with fingers and lips until he had learned them all. The outlaw caught his wrists, pinning them gently above his head. "Not yet. Tonight is about you, but I want." Silas arched up, seeking more contact, more friction, more everything. "I know what you want." Jax's free hand slid down Silas's chest, over his stomach, stopping just above his belt. "And I am going to give it to you. But first, I am going to make you forget every single rule they ever taught you about what a man should and should not want." The promise in those words made Silas's head spin. Outside, night had fallen completely, wrapping the cabin in darkness broken only by firelight. Inside, something was beginning that Silas knew would change him forever, would burn away the deputy and leave behind someone new, someone who had finally stopped running from himself. Jax's mouth found his throat, teeth grazing skin, tongue soothing the sting. Each kiss was a brand marking territory, claiming what had perhaps always been his. Silas gasped, his hips rolling up involuntarily, seeking relief from the ache building between his legs. "Easy?" Jax's hand pressed him back down. "We have all night, deputy. No need to rush toward the finish line." But Silas felt like he had been rushing toward this moment his entire life, every denied impulse and buried desire finally breaking free. His hands twisted in Jax's hair, pulling him up for another kiss, this one demanding, desperate. "That is it." Jax's approval rumbled through his chest. "Take what you need. And Silas did, kissing Jax like a drowning man grasping for air, like every tomorrow depended on this moment. The outlaw met him halfway, giving as good as he got, their mouths moving together in a rhythm older than law or judgment or shame. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Jax's eyes had gone dark with want. "You sure about this, deputy? Because once we cross this line, there is no going back." Silas looked up at the man above him, the most wanted outlaw in 3 territories, the man who had killed his father, the man who had somehow seen past all his walls to the truth he had spent years hiding. "Good. I don't want to go back." The words were barely out before Jax was kissing him again, harder this time, all restraint burning away. Clothes were shed between kisses, leather and cotton pooling on the wooden floor, until there was nothing between them but skin and want and the promise of something Silas had never dared dream about. Jax's hands mapped every inch of him, learning the landscape of his body with thorough attention. Each touch was purposeful, designed to draw out sounds Silas didn't know he could make, to build the fire higher until he thought he might burn alive from the inside out. Please. Silas didn't recognize his own voice, wrecked and desperate. "I need, please, Jax. Tell me what you need." The outlaw's breath was hot against his ear. "Say it. I need you." The admission broke something open in Silas's chest. "I need you inside me. Please, I have never. But I have got you." Jax's voice had gone soft, tender even. "I will take care of you, deputy. I promise." And he did, with a patience Silas hadn't expected, preparing him with gentle touches and whispered reassurances until the initial discomfort gave way to something else entirely, something that felt like coming home to a place he had never been but somehow always known. When Jax finally pressed inside him, slow and careful, Silas's world narrowed to that point of connection, to the overwhelming fullness and the look of concentration on Jax's face as he held himself still, giving Silas time to adjust. "Breathe, deputy." Jax's hand came up to cup his face. "Just breathe through it." Silas did, and with each breath, the burning sensation eased, replaced by a different kind of ache, one that made him roll his hips experimentally, seeking more. Jax groaned, his control slipping. "You are going to be the death of me, then die happy." Silas pulled him down for a kiss, and that was all the permission Jax needed. The rhythm they found together was messy and desperate and perfect. Years of denial burning away with each thrust, each gasp, each whispered curse and prayer. Silas clung to Jax like an anchor in a storm, feeling something building in his core, bright and terrifying and inevitable. "I can't. It is too much, The words tumbled out incoherent. "Yes, you can." Jax's hand wrapped around him, and the dual sensation was overwhelming. "Let go, deputy. I have got you. Let go." And Silas did, shattering apart with a cry that echoed off the cabin walls, pleasure crashing through him in waves so intense he forgot his own name. Somewhere in the midst of it, he felt Jax follow him over the edge, heard his name spoken like a prayer or a curse or maybe both. They collapsed together in a tangle of limbs and sweat and satisfaction, both breathing hard, hearts hammering in sync. For a long moment neither moved, neither spoke. Then Jax rolled to the side, pulling Silas against his chest, and the gesture was so unexpectedly tender that Silas felt his throat tighten. "You okay?" Jax's voice was rough, but there was genuine concern beneath it. Silas nodded against his shoulder, not trusting himself to speak. He felt raw, exposed, like every wall he had ever built had been torn down, leaving him vulnerable in ways that terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. Jax's hand moved in slow circles across his back, soothing. "Sleep. We will figure out the rest in the morning." But Silas knew there was no figuring this out. He had crossed a line tonight that could never be uncrossed, had discovered something about himself that changed everything. Tomorrow he would still be a deputy. Jax would still be an outlaw. The world would still demand they be enemies. But tonight, wrapped in strong arms with firelight painting shadows on the walls, Silas let himself exist in this impossible moment, this stolen peace. Tomorrow could bring judgment and consequences. Tonight, he had found something he hadn't even known he was searching for. And as sleep pulled him under, Silas's last conscious thought was that he had been chasing the wrong thing all along. He hadn't been hunting Jax Maddox for justice or revenge. He had been hunting himself, and in the outlaw's arms, he had finally been found. Dawn came slow, filtering through cracks in the wooden walls like liquid gold. Silas woke to warmth at his back, to the steady rise and fall of breathing that wasn't his own. For a moment, he kept his eyes closed, unwilling to face what morning might bring. In the space between sleep and waking, he could pretend this was normal, that he woke every day in strong arms, that the world outside this cabin wouldn't demand explanations he couldn't give. But reality crept in with the sunlight, the ache in his body, pleasant and unfamiliar, the scent of leather and sage that clung to his skin, the weight of what he had done, what he had become, settling over him like a coat he couldn't shrug off. "You're thinking too loud." Jax's voice was rough with sleep, breath warm against Silas's neck. "I can hear it from here." Silas opened his eyes, staring at the far wall. "What happens now?" Jax's arm tightened around his waist, pulling him closer. Now we stay here a little longer. The rest can wait, but it can't." Silas turned in his arms, needing to see his face. "I am still a deputy. You are still wanted in 3 territories. Last night doesn't change that, doesn't it?" Jax's hand came up, fingers tracing the line of Silas's jaw. "Seems to me everything changed last night." The truth of it sat heavy between them. Silas had crossed more than a physical line. He had betrayed his oath, his duty, everything his father had raised him to believe in. And the worst part was that he couldn't bring himself to regret it. "I should arrest you." The words came out weak, unconvincing even to his own ears. "You should." Jax agreed, thumb brushing across Silas's bottom lip. "But you won't." "How do you know?" "Because if you were going to, you would have done it already. Instead, you're here, in my bed, looking at me like you want to forget the whole world exists." Silas wanted to deny it, but the lie wouldn't form. Because Jax was right. Even now, with morning light exposing every choice he had made in the dark, Silas couldn't make himself move away, couldn't force himself to reach for his gun and his badge and the life that was supposed to define him. "My father would be ashamed." The confession slipped out before he could stop it. "Your father was a fool." Jax's voice held no malice, just statement of fact. He died chasing something he didn't understand, trying to impose his version of right on a world that doesn't work that way. You're not him, Silas. You don't have to die the same way. The use of his given name, not his title, sent warmth spreading through Silas's chest. "How long have you known? About me? About what I was hiding?" "Since the first time I saw you." Jax's mouth curved into a slight smile. "You rode into Silver Creek asking questions about me, all stiff and proper in your deputy's coat. But your eyes, they told a different story. You looked at me like you were starving, and I was the first meal you had seen in years. I didn't." Silas started to protest, but Jax cut him off with a kiss, soft and slow and devastating. "You did, and I have been waiting ever since to see if you were brave enough to admit it." "Is that why you didn't kill me?" Silas asked when they broke apart. "Why you brought me here instead?" "Partly." Jax rolled onto his back, pulling Silas with him until he was sprawled across the outlaw's chest. "But mostly because I wanted to know what it would feel like. What would feel like. This." Jax's hand settled on Silas's hips, holding him in place. "Having someone see the real me and choose to stay anyway. Having someone who knows what I am and doesn't run." The vulnerability in those words caught Silas off guard. He had spent 3 weeks building Jax up into a monster in his mind, something less than human. But the man beneath him was just that, a man. Scarred and dangerous and wanted by the law, yes, but also lonely. Searching for connection in a world that had labeled him unredeemable. "What did my father say to you?" Silas asked quietly. "Before you killed him." Jax's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath stubbled skin. "He called me an abomination, said men like me were a sickness that needed to be purged. Then he drew on me. And you shot him. I shot him." Jax met his eyes, unflinching. "He didn't give me a choice, Silas. It was him or me, and I chose me. I will always choose me." Silas should have felt anger, grief, the burning need for vengeance. but all he felt was a strange, hollow understanding. His father had died the way he lived, rigid and unforgiving, unable to see past his own certainty. And now, Silas was lying in the arms of the man who killed him, feeling more alive than he had in years. "I forgive you." The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise Jax. "For my father, I forgive you." Jax stared at him, something shifting in his expression. "You don't have to do that, I know, but I want to." Silas leaned down, resting his forehead against Jax's. "He made his choice, and you made yours. I don't want to spend the rest of my life chained to his ghost. And what do you want to spend it doing?" The question hung between them, full of possibility and danger. Silas thought about the badge in his discarded coat pocket, about the life waiting for him back in town, about the expectations and duties and the slow suffocation of being what everyone else needed him to be. "I don't know," he admitted. "All I know is that for the first time, I feel like I can breathe, like I am exactly where I'm supposed to be." Jax's hand came up, tangling in Silas's hair. "Even if where you are supposed to be is in an outlaw's bed, especially then." They kissed again, and this time it was different. Not the desperate claimant of the night before, but something softer, almost tender. A promise being made without words, a future being imagined despite all the reasons it shouldn't exist. When they finally pulled apart, the sun had climbed higher, painting the cabin in warm light. Jax sat up, taking Silas with him, settling him in his lap. "We can't stay here forever. The marshal will come looking for you eventually." "I know." Silas traced the scar on Jax's shoulder, a puckered line that spoke of an old bullet wound. "Where will you go?" "West, maybe California. I've got some money saved, enough to start over somewhere no one knows my name." Jax paused, his hands tightening on Silas's hips. "You could come with me." The offer stole Silas's breath. "Run away? Leave everything behind?" "What is there to leave?" Jax challenged. "A badge? A town full of people who will never see you as anything but your father's son? A life spent hiding who you really are?" Put like that, it didn't sound like much of a sacrifice. But still, fear held Silas back. "I have never been anywhere but here. Never been anything but a deputy." Then maybe it is time to find out who Silas Crane is when he's not wearing that badge. Jax's voice was gentle but insistent. "You gave me one night. Give me a few more days. Let me show you what life could be if you stopped running from yourself." Silas knew he should say no. Should put his clothes back on, pin on his badge, ride back to town and pretend none of this ever happened. But the thought of it felt like drowning, like sentencing himself to a slow death of duty and denial. "A few days." He agreed, and watched something bright and fierce flare in Jax's eyes. "A few days," Jax echoed. "And then you decide. Stay or go. I won't hold you here against your will. And if I choose to stay, then we ride west together. Start fresh where no one knows us, where we can be whatever we want to be." The dream of it was intoxicating. Silas let himself imagine it for a moment. A life where he didn't have to hide, didn't have to pretend. Where he could wake up every morning in Jax's arms and not feel like he was committing some unforgivable sin. "What if they come after us?" he asked. "What if they send more deputies, more marshals? Then we deal with it." Jax's smile was sharp, dangerous. "I have been running from the law my whole life, Silas. I know how to disappear." And now, he pulled Silas down for another kiss. "I have got something worth disappearing for." The days that followed blurred together like watercolors in rain. Silas learned what it meant to exist outside the rigid lines of duty and expectation. He learned the taste of Jax's coffee, bitter and strong, drunk from chipped tin cups as dawn painted the canyon walls gold. He learned the sound of Jax's laugh, rare and rough but genuine when Silas said something that caught him off guard. He learned the geography of scars on the outlaw's body, each one a story told in whispers between kisses. On the third day, Jax taught him to shoot left-handed. "Your right is too predictable," he explained, adjusting Silas's stance. "Out here, predictable gets you killed. They stood in a narrow ravine, the crack of gunfire echoing off stone walls. Silas missed the first 5 shots, his unfamiliar hand clumsy on the trigger. But Jax was patient, hands on his hips, breath warm against his ear as he murmured corrections. When Silas finally hit the target, a rusted can balanced on a rock, Jax rewarded him with a kiss that made him forget why accuracy mattered. "You are a good teacher," Silas said when they broke apart, his pulse racing from more than just the shooting. "You are a good student." Jax holstered his own gun, eyes dark with something that had nothing to do with marksmanship. "Quick learner. Wonder what else I could teach you." The promise in those words sent heat flooding through Silas. That night, Jax made good on it, showing him pleasures he had never imagined, drawing sounds from his throat that echoed off the cabin walls. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat cooling on skin, and Silas thought that maybe this was what salvation felt like. Not the cold certainty of his father's church, but this warmth, this connection, this perfect fit of bodies and souls. But paradise, like everything in the West, was temporary. On the 4th morning, Silas woke to find Jax standing at the window, tension radiating from every line of his body. "Something is wrong," the outlaw said without turning. "Too quiet." Silas sat up, reaching for his gun instinctively. "What do you mean?" "The birds." Jax's hand rested on his revolver. "They stopped singing about 10 minutes ago. Either there is a storm coming, or we have got company." Silas's blood ran cold. He scrambled out of bed, pulling on his pants and shirt with fumbling fingers. The badge he had left pinned to his coat caught the light as he moved, a reminder of who he was supposed to be. "Could be nothing," Jax said, but his voice carried doubt. "Could be a mountain lion hunting?" "Could be. Could be a posse," Silas finished. "Looking for me, looking for you." Jax turned then, his expression unreadable. "If it is, what are you going to do?" The question sat between them like a loaded gun. Silas's hand moved unconsciously to his badge, fingers tracing the worn metal. A week ago, the answer would have been simple. He would have turned Jax in, would have ridden back to town with his prisoner, and his pride intact. But now, after days of freedom, after nights of discovering himself in the outlaw's arms, the answer wasn't simple at all. "I don't know," he admitted. "Then you better figure it out fast." Jax crossed to the fireplace, kicking dirt over the embers. "Because if they find us together like this, questions are going to be asked that neither of us can afford to answer." Silas's stomach twisted. "We could run, out the back, into the canyon. They might not even check the cabin. They will check." Jax was moving efficiently now, gathering supplies, loading his saddlebags. A missing deputy and a wanted outlaw? They will tear this place apart looking for answers. Then what do we do? Before Jax could answer, a shout echoed across the canyon. "Deputy Crane, we know you're out here. This is Marshal Hendricks." Silas's blood turned to ice. Hendricks, the man who had pinned the badge on Silas's chest 3 years ago, the man who had promised his father he would look after his son, the man Silas had just betrayed in the worst possible way. Jax's hand found his shoulder, squeezed once. "Your choice, deputy. You can walk out there, tell them I took you prisoner, that you escaped. They will believe you. You go home a hero. And you, I run, like I always do." Jax's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I am good at it. Been doing it my whole life." Silas looked at him, really looked, at the scars and the hardness and the loneliness that lived behind those dark eyes. At the man who had shown him what it meant to stop hiding. The man who had given him a taste of freedom and then offered to disappear so Silas could keep his comfortable lie. "No," Silas heard himself say. "No, I am not doing that." Jax's eyes widened slightly. "Silas, think about what you are." "I have been thinking." Silas grabbed his coat, but instead of putting it on, he unpinned the badge. The metal felt heavier than it should, weighted with 3 years of duty and a lifetime of expectations. "I am done lying, done pretending to be what my father wanted instead of who I am." "Deputy Crane," Hendricks's voice was closer now. "We are coming in. If you are hurt, call out." Silas turned to Jax, holding the badge between them. I am choosing you. I am choosing this. Whatever happens, we face it together. For a moment, Jax just stared at him, something fierce and bright burning in his expression. Then he pulled Silas into a kiss that tasted like desperation and promise and goodbye to everything they had been before this moment. The door burst open with a crash of splintering wood. Marshal Hendricks stood in the entrance, gun drawn, flanked by two deputies Silas recognized from town. Their eyes went from Silas to Jax, to the rumpled bed to the badge in Silas's hand. An understanding dawned across their faces like a sunrise. Silas, Hendricks said slowly, his weathered face a mask of confusion and disappointment. What in God's name are you doing? Silas straightened, putting himself between Jax and the guns. I'm making a choice, sir. One I should have made a long time ago. That man is wanted for murder. Hendricks's gun didn't waver. He killed your father. I know. Silas's voice was steady despite his racing heart. And I forgave him for it. The words landed like stones in water, ripples of shock spreading across the marshal's face. You what? My father made his choice when he rode after Jas alone. He chose hate over understanding, vengeance over mercy. I won't make the same mistake. One of the deputies, a young man named Carter, spoke up. Marshal, look at the bed. Look at them. I think there is more going on here than just forgiveness. The silence that followed was suffocating. Silas watched realization crystallize in Hendricks's eyes, watched disgust replace confusion. When the marshal spoke again, his voice was cold as winter stone. It is worse than I thought. He has corrupted you, turned you into an abomination just like him. The word hit Silas like a physical blow, the same word his father had used before he died, the word that had been weaponized against him his whole life, against everything he was and wanted to be. No, Silas said firmly. He did not corrupt me, Marshal. He freed me. From lying to myself, from pretending to be something I am not, from dying slowly inside a life that never fit. Hendricks's face flushed red. You are throwing away everything. Your badge, your reputation, your father's legacy? For what? For him? Yes. Silas's hand found Jax's, fingers intertwining. For him. And for me. For the chance to be who I really am instead of who everyone expects me to be. The marshal's gun shifted, pointing now at Jax. Then you leave me no choice. I am taking him in. And you are coming back to town to face charges. What charges? Silas demanded. I have broken no law, aiding and abetting a fugitive, dereliction of duty. And, Hendricks's lip curled, there are still laws on the books about your kind of sin, boy. Sodomy is a hanging offense in this territory. The threat hung in the air, heavy and final. Silas felt Jax tense beside him, felt the outlaw's hand drift toward his gun. He tightened his grip, a silent plea. Don't. We can't win this fight. But Jax wasn't looking at the guns. He was looking at Silas, eyes searching. You sure about this? Once we run, there is no coming back. You will be wanted, just like me. I am sure. Silas had never been more certain of anything in his life. What happened next was chaos. Jax moved first, grabbing the table and flipping it toward the deputies as cover. Gunfire erupted, bullets splintering wood and ricocheting off stone walls. Silas dropped low, rolling toward his gun belt, fingers closing around the grip of his revolver. He came up shooting, not aiming to kill but to scatter, to create confusion. Carter went down with a bullet in the shoulder, his gun clattering away. The other deputy dove for cover, returning fire wildly. Hendricks held his ground, his aim steady despite the chaos. You do not want to do this, Silas. There is still time to surrender. But there wasn't. The moment Silas had chosen Jax over duty, over honor, over everything his father had tried to make him, there was no going back. He fired again, close enough to make Hendricks flinch, but not close enough to kill. He couldn't bring himself to kill the man who had been like an uncle to him, even now. The horses, Jax shouted, already moving toward the back door. Silas followed, bullets chasing them across the cabin. They burst out into blazing sunlight, sprinting for the small corral where Jax's horse waited. Jax swung up into the saddle first, then reached down for Silas, hauling him up behind in one smooth motion. The horse bolted before Silas was fully seated, and he had to wrap his arms around Jax's waist to keep from falling. Behind them, more shots cracked the air. Silas pressed his face against Jax's back, feeling the steady pound of the outlaw's heart beneath leather and cotton. They were riding hard, the horse's hooves kicking up red dust, the canyon walls blurring past. "Where are we going?" Silas shouted over the wind. "Away," Jax's voice carried back to him. "As far and as fast as this horse will take us." They rode for hours, pushing the horse to its limits, not daring to stop even when the sounds of pursuit faded behind them. The sun climbed high, then began its descent, painting the desert in shades of amber and rust. Finally, as twilight gathered, Jax pulled the exhausted horse to a stop near a cluster of rocks that offered some shelter. They dismounted in silence, both breathing hard, covered in dust and sweat. Silas's hands were shaking as he helped Jax tend to the horse, giving it the last of their water. Only when the animal was settled did they allow themselves to collapse against the rocks. "We did it," Silas said, the reality of it hitting him all at once. "We really did it. I am a wanted man now." Jax turned to look at him, his expression unreadable in the fading light. Having second thoughts? Silas took inventory of what he had lost. His badge, his reputation, his home, the respect of everyone he had ever known. Everything his father had wanted for him, gone in a hail of gunfire and a handful of desperate choices. Then he looked at what he had gained. The man beside him, scarred and dangerous and real. The freedom to be himself, fully and without apology. The promise of tomorrow without the weight of yesterday's expectations. "No," he said firmly. "No second thoughts." Jax's hand found his in the gathering dark. "What happens now?" Silas laced their fingers together, holding on like an anchor. "Now we keep going. West, like you said. California. Somewhere no one knows us. It won't be easy." Jax's thumb traced circles on Silas's palm. "They will hunt us, put bounties on both our heads. We will be looking over our shoulders for the rest of our lives." "I know." Silas leaned his head against Jax's shoulder. "But at least I will be looking over my shoulder as myself, not as some ghost of what my father wanted me to be." They sat in silence as stars began to appear overhead, countless and brilliant against the darkening sky. Somewhere behind them, a posse was forming. Wanted posters were being printed, their names linked together in infamy. But here, in this moment, they were just two men who had found each other in the vast loneliness of the West. "Jax," Silas said quietly, "thank you. For what? For seeing me. For not running when you could have. For everything." Jax turned, cupping Silas's face in both hands. "I should be thanking you. You gave up everything for me. Your whole life." "No," Silas corrected, leaning into the touch. "I gave up a lie. What I found with you, that is my life now. Everything else was just waiting." They kissed under the stars, slow and deep, a promise sealed without words. When they broke apart, Jax pressed his forehead to Silas's. "We should keep moving at first light, put as much distance between us and them as possible." "I know," Silas agreed. "But for tonight, can we just stay here? Like this?" Jax pulled him closer, wrapping them both in his coat against the desert chill. "Yeah, deputy, we can stay like this." "I'm not a deputy anymore," Silas reminded him. "No," Jax agreed, and there was warmth in his voice now, something soft beneath the rough edges. "Now you are just mine." The possessiveness should have bothered Silas, should have made him bristle against being claimed, but instead it filled him with a fierce joy. After a lifetime of belonging to duty and expectation and his father's ghost, belonging to someone who saw him, truly saw him, felt like freedom. They slept fitfully that night, taking turns keeping watch, starting at every sound in the darkness. But when dawn broke, painting the desert in shades of pink and gold, they rose together. Jax helped Silas into the saddle, then swung up behind him this time, arms around his waist. "You ready?" Jax asked against his ear. Silas looked back the way they had come, toward everything he was leaving behind. Then he looked ahead, toward the unknown horizon and whatever future they could build there. "I'm ready," he said. "Let us go home." "Home," Jax repeated, and the word sounded like a question. "Wherever we are together," Silas clarified, leaning back against the solid warmth of the outlaw's chest. "That is home now." They rode west as the sun climbed higher, two silhouettes against the vast emptiness of the frontier. Behind them, the past was burning away like morning mist. Ahead of them, the future waited, uncertain and dangerous in theirs. The ride west was harder than Silas had imagined. They avoided towns, traveling by night when possible, taking whatever work they could find that didn't require names or questions. Jax knew all the hidden places, the forgotten trails where outlaws and deserters could disappear. They became ghosts, drifting through the territories like smoke. 3 weeks into their flight, they stopped at a trading post run by a weathered woman who asked no questions and accepted gold without comment. While Jax negotiated for supplies, Silas saw the wanted poster. His own face stared back at him, rendered in crude ink, the words beneath making his stomach clench. Wanted for murder, aiding a fugitive, and crimes against nature. $500 reward, dead or alive. Jax found him standing frozen before the poster, something dark crossing his face. They upped the price. Silas couldn't tear his eyes away from his own image. "They're calling me a murderer, but I did not kill anyone. Carter died 2 days after we shot him. Infection set in." Jax's voice was flat, matter of fact. "They are blaming both of us." The weight of it crashed over Silas. He had shot Carter, had aimed for his shoulder thinking to wound, not kill. But the frontier was unforgiving, and a shoulder wound in the wrong place could be as deadly as a bullet to the heart. "I killed a man," Silas whispered. "I killed him, and I did not even know." Jax's hand found his shoulder, grip firm. "He was shooting at us. You did what you had to do to survive. That is what you keep telling yourself?" Silas turned to face him. "That everyone you have killed deserved it? That it was all survival?" The accusation hung between them, sharp as broken glass. Jax's expression hardened. "I am not going to apologize for staying alive, Silas. I have done what I had to do to survive in a world that wanted me dead from the day I was born." "I know," Silas said, some of his anger deflating. "I know, I thought it would be different. Running with you, being free. I did not think it would feel like this." "Like what?" "Like I am drowning." Silas gestured at the poster. "Like every choice I make pulls me further down, and I cannot tell anymore where the bottom is." Jax was quiet for a long moment. Then he took down the poster, folded it carefully, and tucked it into his coat. "You want to go back? Face trial? Try to explain yourself to men who will never understand?" The thought made Silas's chest tighten. "No, I cannot go back." "Then forward is the only direction left." Jax cupped his face, forcing Silas to meet his eyes. "It gets easier. The guilt, the fear, the looking over your shoulder. You learn to live with it, or it eats you alive. Your choice which. How do you live with it? All the killing, all the running?" Jax's thumb traced Silas's cheekbone. "I focus on what is in front of me. Right now, that is you. Making sure you survive. Making sure we both get somewhere we can breathe. And when we get there, when we finally stop running, then we figure out how to live." Jax's voice dropped lower, intimate despite the public space. "Really live. Not just survive, but build something. Maybe a ranch, somewhere remote. Maybe just a cabin where we do not have to hide what we are to each other." The dream of it was almost painful in its simplicity. Silas closed his eyes, letting himself imagine it, waking up without fear, going to sleep without weapons in reach, being able to touch Jax in daylight without looking over his shoulder. "I want that," he admitted. "God help me, I want that so much." "Then keep riding with me." Jax kissed him, quick and fierce, heedless of who might see. "Keep choosing this, choosing us, and I promise you we'll get there." They left the trading post with supplies and renewed purpose. But the road kept getting harder. Twice they had close calls with bounty hunters, men drawn by the price on their heads. Each time they escaped by luck and skill, and Jax's intimate knowledge of the wild country. But each escape cost them something. Their horse went lame and had to be put down, a loss that left them both shaken. Supplies ran low, the nights grew colder as autumn crept toward winter, and they had no shelter but what they could make from rocks and scrub brush. One night, huddled together against a bitter wind, Silas broke. "I am sorry," he said into the darkness. "I am sorry I am not stronger, not better at this. You would be better off without me slowing you down." Jax's arms tightened around him. "Do not say that. Do not ever say that. But it is true. You have been running your whole life. You know how to survive alone. I am a liability. You are the reason I want to survive." Jax's voice was fierce. "Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions, running because it was all I knew how to do. But you make me want to stop running, want to find a place to put down roots, want to build instead of just destroy." Silas turned in his arms, searching Jax's face in the starlight. "You mean that?" "Every word." Jax kissed his forehead, his cheeks, his mouth. "You're not a liability, Silas. You're my reason." The words settled something in Silas's chest, a warmth that pushed back against the cold and fear. "I love you," he said, the admission slipping out before he could second-guess it. "I know it is fast, I know it is crazy, but I love you." Jax went very still. Then he laughed, a sound of pure relief and joy. "Thank God. I have been in love with you since I saw you standing in that canyon, all righteous fury and trembling hands. I just did not think you would ever feel the same." They kissed under the cold stars, and for a moment the hardship and the fear and the endless running all fell away. There was just this, two men who had found each other in the vast loneliness and chosen to hold on. 2 months after leaving the cabin, they crossed into California. The landscape changed, mountains giving way to valleys, desert to grassland. They found work on a remote ranch, the owner an old man who needed hands and did not ask questions. For 3 months they worked side by side, mending fences and breaking horses and slowly remembering what it felt like to sleep in a real bed. The other ranch hands gave them strange looks sometimes, noticing the way they stood too close, the way their eyes lingered too long. But no one said anything, and if the old man suspected anything, he kept it to himself. It was almost peaceful, almost normal. Silas started to let himself believe they might actually make it, might actually build the life Jax had promised. Then one morning, riders appeared on the horizon, 5 of them, moving with purpose toward the ranch. Silas recognized the lead horse before he recognized the rider. Marshal Hendricks, still hunting them after all this time. "We have to go," Jax said, already moving toward the barn. "Now, Silas." But Silas was tired of running, tired of looking over his shoulder, tired of half-lived happiness stolen between moments of fear. "No," he said. "No more running." Jax grabbed his arm. "Silas, they will hang us." "Maybe," Silas agreed. "Or maybe it is time to stand and face this. Face them, make them see what they are really condemning." "You are out of your mind." Jax's grip tightened. "I am not letting you throw your life away, and I am not letting you run anymore." Silas pulled free, turning to face the approaching riders. "If we run now, we will always be running. There will always be another Hendricks, another posse, another close call. I am done living that way. Then you are a fool." But Jax did not run. He stood beside Silas, hand on his gun, as the riders came closer. Hendricks dismounted slowly, his face hard, but his eyes betraying something that might have been regret. "Silas, Jax, I figured I would find you two together." "Marshal," Silas said, proud of how steady his voice sounded, "you have been following us a long time. 3 months." Hendricks's hand rested on his revolver. 3 months watching you throw away everything your father worked for. Everything he died for." "My father died for hate," Silas corrected. "I am choosing to live for love. There is a difference. Love," Hendricks spat the word like a curse. "What you two have, that is not love. It is sin. It is corruption. It is the only real thing in my life," Silas interrupted. "You can call it whatever you want, Marshal, but it does not change what it is. It does not change that I would rather die being myself than live being what you want me to be." Hendricks looked between them, his jaw working. "Then you will get your wish. I am taking you both in." Judge will sort out the charges. We are not going back, Jack said quietly. You know we can't. Then I will take you dead. Hendrix's gun cleared his holster, and the moment hung suspended, balanced on the edge of violence. Silas stepped forward, putting himself between the gun and Jack's. If you're going to shoot, shoot me, but leave him alone. Jax grabbed his shoulder, trying to pull him back. Silas, no. Yes, Silas said firmly. You saved me, Jax. Showed me what it meant to be free. Now let me save you. The standoff stretched, tension thrumming in the air like a plucked string. Then, from the ranch house behind them, a voice called out. Marshall. The old rancher walked toward them, shotgun in hand. These boys work for me. They have been nothing but honest and hard-working. You want them, you go through me. Hendrix's gun wavered. Sir, these men are wanted criminals. They are ranch hands who have not caused a moment of trouble. The old man's voice was firm. Now I suggest you and your men get off my property before I decide you are trespassing. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Hendrix slowly holstered his gun. This is not over, he said to Silas. You know that, right? Someone will always be hunting you. I know, Silas replied, but at least I will be living while they hunt, not just existing in some cage of other people's making. Hendrix shook his head sadly. Your father would be ashamed. My father was ashamed of me my whole life, Silas said quietly, for being too soft, too different, too much myself. So his shame does not scare me anymore. The marshal mounted his horse, the other riders following suit. You have made your choice. May God have mercy on your soul. They rode off, dust rising in their wake. Silas watched until they were specks on the horizon, then turned to the old rancher. Thank you. The old man shrugged. My son lived his whole life hiding what he was, died alone and miserable because of it. I will not stand by and watch that happen to someone else. He looked between them. You boys want to stay on, you're welcome. Just keep your business, and we will all get along fine. After he walked away, Silas and Jack stood in silence. Finally, Jack spoke. You really meant that? About dying rather than living without this? Every word. Silas took his hand openly, not caring who saw. I am done running, Jax. From them, from myself, from what we are. If they come back, we will face it. Together. Together, Jax agreed, and kissed him there, in the open daylight. A declaration and a promise and a choice that could not be uncrossed. They stayed at the ranch through winter and into spring, building a life piece by careful piece. It was not perfect. Bounty hunters came sometimes, drawn by rumors. They had to stay alert, always ready to defend themselves. But they also had long, quiet mornings and evenings of peace, nights wrapped in each other without fear. And slowly, painfully, they learned what it meant to be free. 1 year to the day after Silas cut his badge off, they sat on the porch of the small cabin the old man had let them build on the far corner of his property. The sun was setting, painting the California hills in gold and amber, and Silas thought about how far they had come, how much they had survived. Any regrets? Jax asked, as if reading his thoughts. Silas considered the question honestly. He thought about his badge, his reputation, the life he could have had. Then he looked at the man beside him, scarred and dangerous, and his. Every regret, he said, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Jack smiled, real and warm and free. That is good, because I am not letting you go. Ever. Good, Silas echoed, and leaned in for a kiss as the sun dipped below the horizon. They had been chased, hunted, condemned, and almost destroyed. But here, in this stolen piece of peace, they had found something more valuable than safety or respectability or any badge. They had found each other and found themselves, and that was worth every hardship, every sacrifice, every terrifying choice that led them to this moment. The West had tried to break them, but instead, they had bent it to make room for their love. And as stars began to appear overhead, countless and brilliant, Silas knew that this stolen life with all its dangers and uncertainties was exactly where he was meant to be.